All right, Naveen, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing, Drew. How about you?
I'm doing amazing as well. Really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate your time. Super excited to have you on. I've heard a lot of good things about you from other people in the industry, and I feel very lucky and fortunate to have you on my podcast.
I think that most of the other people are just very, very kind, just like you.
Maybe they are. Maybe they are. We'll see. But no, I definitely trust these people. So really appreciate you coming on. I kind of want to dive right in, Naveen, and introduce you to my audience. And the first question I have is what type of environment did you grow up in that helped to shape who you have become today?
Well, I think as we all know that our early childhood to some extent shapes us who we become.
Yes.
So in my childhood was a very humble beginning, growing up in India. And, many times we didn't have food to eat. We really didn't have a place we called home. And we moved from village to village. And, to large extent, one would argue that was a tough life. But I really think that was, the foundation of who I am today. And the couple of things that I learned from it. The change became so routine that I got comfortable with change. So while everyone is afraid of change, to me, the change was something that happens all the time. And really being comfortable in a new situation, new location, new people, it's something became part of who I am. And that really, to large extent, when I look at my life as a professional now, I have done 7 companies in 7 different industries.
Wow.
And every time I enter an industry, it's never about, oh my God, I know nothing about it. And I say like, oh, that means I'm going to be one of the most dangerous person in this industry has ever seen because I know absolutely nothing about it. That means I'm going to challenge the things that no one ever challenged before. The best you can do is to make an incremental improvement. You can improve it by 10% or 15%. But if you want to change something 10 times or 100 times, you have to come from an outside the industry looking in. And it's not thinking outside the box. It's really thinking in a totally different box. Right. And that's what allows you to do things that no one ever thought. Become an expert by taking the foundation of the industry as granted, and they can never challenge it because that's what makes them an expert, right?
Yes.
And so I think, coming from that perspective, I have really benefited. Other thing that I really benefited was the fact we were poor is because my dad decided he wants to be an honest man and keep the values of what matters. Mm-hmm. And that meant was really going through tough time, but never sacrificing who you are as a person. And to me, that became the key to who I am today. That means you never compromise the integrity of the things you do, whether it is in a company, making sure the science you're talking about is a real solid science, or the decisions you're making are the decisions that are always going to be creating value for someone else. And you, to some extent, if you get something from someone and you didn't deliver the equivalent or more of a value, then you are a parasite on humanity. And that should never be the goal.
Wow, that is beautiful. That is so powerful, Naveen. I have so many questions. The first question I have is, coming from poverty, what was the first win that you had to help shift your mindset to make you believe that you could do big things? Because I think a lot of people that grow up in poverty are stuck in poverty, and a lot of it is a mindset. So what was your first win that made you believe in yourself?
So I think, again, there's rarely a moment that ever happens and say, oh, this light switch went on.
Yeah.
These are really the continual improvements you see in life, right? Mm-hmm. And life teaches you a lot. So when someone asks me, who is my mentor? And I say, it's life. Life never stops teaching. It's something. Sometimes we stop learning, right?
That's true.
So my point is, as an entrepreneur, I realized very early in my life, the life of an entrepreneur is like a heartbeat. If it's not going up and down and it's smooth, you're already dead. So you never want a smooth line. You want that ups and downs of your lives. And when the things are down, all you have to do is hunker down and know the next beat is going to be up.
Yeah.
And when you are on top of the world, just remember, if you don't keep your friends close and you get too cocky, the winter is coming. So my point is, that is really how one always looks at life, is that my mindset became that everything is possible.
Yeah.
because the survival means everything is possible. The fact you can survive in this environment, it allows you to say you have nothing to lose. You can roll the dice anytime and say, the worst comes to worst, I won't have food to eat, been there, done that. I won't have a place to stay, been there, done that.
That's what I love about your story, and so many people in this industry that are shakers and movers that come from outside of these industries. You yourself, Elon Musk, Henry Ford, these big names that have kind of taken us so far because they've come from outside this industry, and I think it's beautiful. Tell us how you got into health, Viome specifically. Tell us that story, and what was the thing you saw that needed to change.
So first of all, as you know, my other company that I was working on is a company called Moon Express. Mm-hmm. And that is literally the only company in the universe that has permission to leave Earth orbit and land on the moon, right? Yep. And now we are launching our first mission to the moon. And the only reason I mention that is when you're doing literally the moon shot, what do you do for an encore, right? You do another moon shot, right? So in this case, when I was, as we're getting ready to launch our mission to the moon next year, I start thinking about what are the biggest problems facing humanity. And, one of the reasons I do that, Drew, is that I feel that God has been very kind to us. The society has been very kind to us. We came from nothing. And everything we have today is because so many people in my life helped me when I was down. And I look at the stuff and say, how am I ever going to pay my debt back to the society? The people who helped me don't need my help. I can't just pay them back. And the only way I know how to pay my debt back is to essentially pay forward. So if you can't pay back, you pay forward. And my whole life is now dedicated towards doing things that can help billions of people around the world. Now, coming back to answer your question, I looked at the two biggest problems that I found that I thought was meaningful enough for me to be able to go look at was education and healthcare. And it turns out the more time I spend on both of them, the problems are very, very similar. In a sense, in our education system, everyone believes it's broken, just like a healthcare system. People believe for whatever reason the system is just not working for them. And they think there's nothing we can do other than keep fixing this broken system. And what really the truth is, neither one of the system is actually broken. They're simply become obsolete in a sense that they're doing the job that they were designed to do. They do it extremely well. Our needs today are very different than needs were when we were actually designed these systems. So education system was designed to teach us skills. And we could take those skills for the rest of our life, and life was wonderful. We live in this world of exponential technologies. That means it doesn't matter what we learn. By the time we graduate, the skill that we learned became obsolete. Mm-hmm. So now we have to rethink our education system and saying, okay, how do we create a system that's about learning to learn? Learning to use the technology to solve a problem. You can't be unidisciplinary because problems don't tend to be unidisciplinary, right? Yeah. So you have to be multidisciplinary. And the whole idea of working together to solve a problem. Whereas in our current education system, if I say, hey, Drew, I'm doing an exam. Hey, what do you think is the answer? People say, oh, you're cheating. And when you do the same thing at work, people say, oh, he's a good team player.
It's opposite.
So point is, and so I really thought that was the problem I wanted to fix. Then I start to look at healthcare and say, oh my God, this is the only industry. The more money we are spending, the worse the customers of this industry are getting, right? The only industry where you find that every stakeholder does not benefit when the customer gets better. If customers' life are better, everyone, the industry suffers. So the whole purpose is how can we victimize our customer as long as we can so we can make the most money. Especially if you think about the chronic diseases. We spend almost 90% of all our healthcare dollars on chronic diseases. And everyone loves you to have a chronic disease. The minute you are young and say, I got diabetes, ka-ching, rest of our lives, we have a subscription business for pharmaceutical company, for our doctors, for hospitals, for insurance company. Everyone benefits, right? Yeah. And interesting thing is, what I started to do was, first thing is not knowing anything about the industry. First thing I do, and I'm going to just give you the things how I went about doing it. So everyone listening it to can say, I know what to do, whatever things I want to do. Mm-hmm. So first thing I did was, okay, if healthcare industry is what I want to fix, and the reason I wanted to fix is it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. As you and I both know, if you want to make $1 billion company, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is solve a $10 billion problem. You want to make a $10 billion company, go out and solve $100 billion problem. You want to create $100 billion company, solve $1 trillion problem. Here we are looking at multi-trillion-dollar problem, right? So let's go solve that, right? And it turns out that so first thing I do is I start reading a lot. So I knew nothing about this industry. I probably must have read 50 to 100 books on what is causing people to be sick. And then I probably read at least 1,000 to 10,000 research articles. And it became pretty clear to me that everywhere you look at, it's becoming clear that every single chronic disease, we call them a disease, but they're really the set of symptoms that we name them, right?
Yeah.
These symptoms that we call diseases, every one of them have a same root cause. That means chronic diseases are caused by chronic inflammation, and the chronic inflammation is caused by the imbalance of your gut. And that was the thing. So if you can Google today and you say Parkinson's and microbiome, you will see that actually your Parkinson's starts in your gut 15 years before you see the first symptom ever. Yep. Same thing, depression, anxiety, obesity, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, right? And you go through the heart diseases, you start to look at cancer. Now they have research on pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, liver cancer, and also the other breast cancer that is being caused by the microbiome, the imbalance of microbiome. And so much so that even the cancer therapy, whether they work or don't work, depends on your gut microbiome. So there was a research paper just came out that shows that, hey, whether the immunotherapy works or does not work depends on your gut microbiome. Whether the chemotherapy works or kills you depends on your gut microbiome. Wow. So I start thinking, oh my God, if everything is connected to your gut, why is it no one has done something about it? And it turns out there are a whole bunch of scam artists that are already doing the microbiome testing. So I'm thinking, what is wrong? The people are doing microbiome testing, but nobody seems to be getting better. And what I learned was what they were focusing and doing was going to do no good to anyone. And here's why. The microbiome testing so far has been focused on the organisms. That means what organisms exist in your gut. And most companies are even looking at that such high level. So that there are companies, 99% of the companies that do microbiome tests today, they all use a technology called 16S. Okay. Right. 16S is one of the ancient technology that can never, so 16S, just to be just tiny bit scientific here, is a fraction of a gene that only exists in bacteria. So by definition, you're not going to see any virus, any yeast, any fungus, any mold. And even at the bacteria, it has a small portion that tells you what genus this bacteria belongs to. At a genus level, every single human being has identical genuses. That means genuses of bacteria in your gut is same as mine and anyone else in this world. Okay. At a genus level, somebody asked me, hey, what is a genus level? And I say, if you were to ask me and say, hey, Naveen, you're from India. Can you give me the genus level what the India is? And I say, oh, of course. There are some men, there are some women, and there are some young people, and there are some old people. And he said, well, that's just like America. And the answer is yes. The only difference is there may be more women in India than there are in the US. And people say, oh, I see that. And I heard there are a lot more crimes in India, so women must be all criminal. And we all look at it like, really? You mean all women are criminal? And that's really the whole science used to be, oh, you have high pharmaceuticals, you have low bacteroidetes. That's it. No wonder you have cancer. Right? Oh, yeah. Like, really? So the point was they were really not doing anything meaningful. Then people say, oh, what if we can look at all, not just genus, the species, the strain levels? Wouldn't that solve the problem? And then the people came up with what's called metagenomics, right? And they say they can look at all the strains. But the problem is none of that thing actually does much for you, because what you want to do is look at the functional microbiome. That means what are they actually producing? And this was the insight that I got was you can find 100 or 1,000 different organisms doing exactly the same thing. So when you look at the taxonomic level, you say, oh, this person has A, this person has B, the other person who is sick has C. There is nothing here. Mm-hmm. And what you don't realize is all three of them, A, B, and C, are producing lipopolysaccharide, and that's causing inflammation, right? That means it's not the organism, it is about what they are doing. The criminals do crime. It's not so you can't say anybody who's named Paul is a criminal. You say a Paul who commits crime is criminal. Right?
Yes.
And that is really the thing. So we started looking at, are they producing butyrate? Are they producing things that are nutrients like folic acid, the vitamin K, or they're producing things that actually are inflaming your gut? And that's called the whole thing called metatranscriptomics, or basically a functional microbiome of what is being done. Now, so once I say, oh, that is really the key, then I know nothing about it. What do I do?
Yeah.
It so happened I was at Los Alamos National Lab. As you know, Los Alamos is famous for developing atomic bomb. This is where all the stuff happens. It used to be called Manhattan Project. It wasn't done in Manhattan, I can tell you that. It was actually done at Los Alamos. So these are the guys who do all the national security stuff. Okay. They were working on a project, so I was meeting with them on a completely different topic. And there was a scientist who was telling me that I'm working on this biodefense technology. And we can now find out every organism, if there was a bad actor who can get hold of something nasty, and suddenly bad things happen, how would we know what is making people sick? And he said, you know what we did? We can now look at any bodily fluid, from your stool, your urine, from your blood, from your saliva, and we can find out every organism, and we can tell you what they are producing, because we need to know what they are producing. That's the only way we will cure it, right?
Yeah.
And it's, holy cow, if you are able to tell me what's making people sick, why can't I keep people healthy?
Yeah.
And that was the genesis. So we got the exclusive license for that technology and started this. And amazing things happened, Drew.
Yeah.
Coming from the world that I come in, you rarely hear from people that says, you changed my life. Every day we get hundreds of emails, people saying, my God, my life is completely changed. I used to have anxiety, it is gone. I used to have depression, I'm no longer depressed. I lost, two of our customers went on Dr. Oz show. One lost 71 pounds, one lost 49 pounds. We don't focus on losing weight.
Yeah.
We don't focus on depression. We don't focus on anxiety. We have people who are telling us that their joint pains are gone, their autoimmune diseases are disappearing. These are all the symptoms, and all we are doing is keeping your gut balance and reducing the inflammation. When you reduce the inflammation, the symptoms go away.
Yeah.
Right? So interesting thing is, the thing that surprised me most was one woman posted on our Facebook group, my eyesight has really improved, and I wonder, am I just hallucinating? And the two other women jumped in, I didn't mean to say it, but my eyesight is better too. And I'm thinking, eyesight, really?
Yeah.
But there you have it, right?
That is an amazing story, Naveen, and I just really want to say, I have a lot of respect for what you've done, because, I think that the thing that paralyzes a lot of people, entrepreneurs, is the how. Like we were like, how am I going to do this? I don't know, so I might as well give up. And I think if you have a why and you have a purpose and you have the persistence, the how is going to figure itself out. And you've done that, and you've made it unique to what your vision was. And then skipping ahead, I just want to say really quick. For people listening to this, I think the future of the health and fitness industry, which is where I come from, we try and put people in a box like, hey, here's the keto diet, it'll fix all these problems, but it's very bio-individual, and people don't realize that. And I think what you're doing, and I think the future of the healthcare industry is customizing it to each individual, and that's kind of what's going to change people. In my opinion. Go ahead. I know you want to say something.
No, Drew, no. I was just listening to you and I'm thinking, oh my God, you're one of the first few smart people who actually understand that, because everybody in the fitness world has this, what I would say, fat diet, right? Yes. You follow my modified keto diet. You follow my paleo diet, you follow my Atkins diet, you follow this diet, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is, as you pointed out, we as humans are very, very different. Each one of us are unique. In fact, there is no such thing as universal healthy food. A food that's good for Drew may not be good for Naveen. And in fact, the food that's good for me today may not be good for me 3 months or 4 months from now, because my body is constantly changing and adapting.
Yes.
So what we did was very smart. Was we analyze your gut and we say, oh, you're producing these things and you're not producing the good stuff. Now, if you have these organisms, what do we have to feed you that will allow you to produce the good stuff? And what do we have to stop feeding these organisms so bad stuff doesn't get produced? So I'm going to give you a couple of really interesting examples that most people felt that most people believe, like my wife, I'm eating healthy. And the healthy meant was, oh, I eat my green stuff. I'm eating spinach. I'm eating broccoli. I'm eating oats. I'm eating avocado, right? And I'm gluten-free, and I'm doing low-fat diet, or I'm doing whatever that is, happens to be, right? Interestingly, it turns out more than half the people cannot digest spinach. So spinach, as you and I both know, has oxalic acid.
Yes.
And oxalic acid, unless it can be detoxified by our gut, at best, it ends up as a kidney stone, or worse, it starts causing inflammation. Same thing happens, by the way. So you're talking about almonds, you're talking about raspberry, you're talking about a pomegranate juice. These things people believe are antioxidative. It turns out neither one of them is actually antioxidative. They all contain something called allergic acid. Allergic acid is not antioxidative. What happens is our gut microbiome, if you have the right enzymes and peptides, can convert the allergic acid into something called urolithin A, ULA. And urolithin A, when it's absorbed in the body, is what really makes it antioxidative. So it's not the food. What food gets converted into is what makes it nutrients, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out almost half the people who actually are taking pomegranate juice or eating almonds or doing raspberry believe they're eating healthy. In fact, could be either pissing off their money or worse, causing inflammation, right?
Yeah.
So another example that I was going to give you was that one of our customers who is very famous has been really, really sick and went to 5 doctors. And she sent me the testimonial. So, and saying, oh my God, I went to 5 doctors, took all antibiotics. I've been throwing up diarrhea. I did not know what to do. Right. And I've been just eating healthy. I cut everything down, and I was going to only eat the healthy food. And when we did the test, we told her to avoid certain foods. And she says the 3 foods that we told her to avoid changed her life. Spinach, broccoli, and corn, because she was eating gluten-free diet, eating corn, and she was eating spinach and broccoli because Popeye said spinach is good for you. Right? So my point was, those 3 foods were the one that were causing all of our issues. So my point is, that simple change that we understood what was causing inflammation completely changed her life. Right?
That is amazing. And that just goes to show how bio-individual our diets need to be. But the problem I think that people have is they want to just be told what to do, and they just want it to be simple. They don't want to think about it because to customize it or to go get blood testing is really hard to do. So what I want to do next...
You don't have to do blood testing anymore, right? So this is the part is that we eliminated all that stuff. We made it so simple. I think I have a kit right here. Let me see.
Yeah, right here.
No, actually, that's the old one.
Oh, this is the old one. Okay.
So this is the new kit.
Okay.
Beautiful silver.
That is beautiful.
So this box, you open it up with a magnetic lock, and there's the kit underneath. That's all you need. You don't need the... Remember, in the old times, you had to do a finger prick and you had to do all of the glycemic response test. We completely changed that now. Okay. And the reason is we actually did a massive clinical trial of 1,000 people. We put a continuous glucose monitoring, and we fed them from whole foods, 55,000 different foods. And we saw that based on what your gut microbiomes are producing, how does the glycemic response is coming on the host side. And we built a complete machine learning model. So we can now predict when Drew's gut is producing this stuff or these genes are active. When you eat almonds, you're going to have a very high glycemic response. Whereas for me, the almonds may be perfect, right? It may be that the white bread is better for you and whole wheat bread is better for me. Right? It's really amazing to see that. The reason is people say, oh my God, are you crazy? The white bread? And the answer is yes, white bread. Because a lot of the people are sensitive to the lactants that are on the skin of the wheat. And when you actually take that out and you're eating the white flour, then you actually are removing all that stuff, right? So some people that actually is better, right? So another thing that surprised me was, I'm going to give you some of the learnings coming from outside the industry that I found. I thought it was fascinating, and I thought your audience might find fascinating. There are more foreign cells in our human body than the human cells. So think about it for a second. We as humans, we are more foreign than original what we get from mom and dad. But that's nothing. Our human DNA only produces about 20,000 genes.
Okay.
Whereas the gut microbiome produces about 2 million to 20 million genes.
Wow.
That means at best, we are 1% human. When it comes to the gene expression in our body, we are less than 1% human.
Wow.
Now, the thing that really interesting is we somehow find this whole idea of these gut organisms like creepy. It's like, oh my God, they're inside us. You're feeding them. What are they doing? What we don't realize is we evolved as a ecosystem. We evolved as a walking, talking, living ecosystem where microbes and the humans actually work together, so much so that if you think about all the foods and our detoxification happens in our gut. When we eat the food, they actually digest it, they convert them into nutrients, they work with our immune system to essentially keep the immune system trained. In fact, the reason we have all these chronic diseases because our immune system goes out of whack, and it goes out of whack for two reasons. Our microbiomes are not training the immune system, or we have a leaky gut that's leaking the food into your blood and creating all the inflammation. And the reason that you have a leaky gut is because many reasons. You have a lot of inflammation, or this is maybe surprising to all the keto guys. Don't kill me. When you are fasting, when you're fasting and you're not feeding your gut microbiome, many of the microbes in our gut, they start to eat our gut lining, the mucus. They are essentially called the mucus. They synthesize the mucus as a carbohydrates and feed themselves.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to feed them, they're going to feed themselves and they're going to eat the gut lining.
Wow.
And when you start to eat the gut lining, you start to essentially break the epithelial barriers.
Interesting. So you're saying the fasting could be unhealthy for you, which
yes.
Okay, so does that mean everyone should avoid fasting? Because I've been of the belief that religion has had fasting for years and it's been around for centuries. Are there any benefits to fasting?
Absolutely. So the very interesting thing is there are some people who will benefit from what I would say a full day of fasting or 2 days of fasting, and other people actually will be harmed by that, but they will benefit from fasting for 12 hours or 16 hours.
Okay,
right?
Gotcha.
So that means it's really, you need to know according to your body, are you better off fasting for 12, 16-hour fasting, or do you go on a 2-day fasting, right?
Gotcha.
And it's not religion. So remember, a lot of the things in the religion came about because they learned intuitively, or I would say trial and error, what is good for you, right?
Interesting.
So for example, in the religion I come from, in the religion it says you need to eat before sunsets.
Okay.
You would say, why sunset? Because generally the sun will set, and then you would be awake for 3 or 4 hours after that. And now we know we shouldn't be eating right before going to bed because our digestive system shuts down when we are sleeping.
Yep.
Right? So my point was they came up with this whole idea that made it easy for someone to say, sunset, no eating.
Yes.
Right? But the point was what they were trying to say was, hey, don't eat at least 3 or 4 hours before you go to sleep.
Gotcha.
Right?
Interesting.
So anything, other thing that I was going to say was what I found really fascinating as we were looking, and now we have, tens of thousands of people who are taking the test, and some very interesting things that we learned, that some of the people who have been vegetarian for a very long time, we find that their microbiome actually has evolved to convert carbohydrate into branch chain amino acids. Think for a second. Our microbes are converting carbs into precursor to protein. Who would have thunk that? Who would have thunk, right? So, but a lot of people who are vegetarian, they may not get enough protein, but their microbes are changing that.
Interesting.
Right? Other thing that we learned was our microbes actually detoxify the things that we tend to eat.
Okay.
So, for example, if you are living in a society that, for example, eats a lot of MSG, their microbes start to grow and they detoxify MSG and you have no impact. And you and I go eat in a Chinese restaurant with MSG, we get headache.
Yeah.
Right? Because our microbes cannot detoxify that.
Gotcha.
So we see when we look at your gut or your poop, we can actually tell you what drugs you're taking, where you may have been, because we can see this particular toxin came from this area. Right? We can tell you what type of foods you're eating, what macronutrients you're eating. We can tell you, is spinach good for you or bad for you? Is pomegranate juice good for you or bad for you? And another thing that we saw, which was really surprising to us, was our microbiome are producing hormones. And we always thought the hormones were produced in the human body.
Yes.
And we never realized that testosterone and estrogen, our microbes are producing as well. And that's really interesting, is that we see a lot of the people who have impact on the diet and suddenly changing the diet, their hormonal balance changes. So people who have thyroids, people who have autoimmune diseases are essentially can be fixed by balancing their gut.
Gotcha. That is amazing. And I have heard of that before. And I think some people realize, the way they look at food is, hey, this hamburger and fries is going to make me gain weight and this salad is going to make me lose weight. But rather than what it's doing to our gut and how it's going to change us, as a whole on the cellular level, what it's doing to our hormones. But people have such an outside perspective sometimes when it comes to food and health and fitness and looking skinny, right? And so I think this is a great way of changing your perception of what the food you're eating and how it affects you.
Can I say one more thing on
the
meat? The meat you talked about, red meat. Everyone believes the red meat somehow is bad for you.
Yes.
Basically, if you look at some foods that have choline or they have carnitine, and those choline or carnitine goes into our gut, and there are certain enzymes and peptides that can convert them into TMA. And the TMA gets absorbed into the blood, and our liver actually converts them into TMAO, which is TMA oxidized, right?
Okay.
And that is the one that causes the heart disease. So interesting thing is, many people in their gut cannot convert the choline or carnitine into TMA. And if it's not happening, you can eat all the damn red meat you want. It's not going to have any bad effect on you. And that's the reason we see a lot of people who can eat red meat and they don't have problem with that. And other people who eat red meat, they get heart disease. What is it? That is the thing, that our gut, it determines whether the carnitine or choline gets converted into TMA or not.
Wow. And you guys can tell this just from these tests, right?
Yeah. So basically, that's what we do. We look at all the transcripts and we can tell you these transcripts are producing TMA. Are they producing flagella? They're producing LPS, butyrate, and all the different pathways. Okay. And that's why we call this a functional microbiome test.
So let's walk people through this. So I know these are the old packaging, but so they have the test at home, right? Okay, that one looks more beautiful. So let's walk them through it. They go, obviously it involves poop, right? So they get a sample. Let's walk them through the beginning to the end and how it works.
So basically, you order the test, the kit comes in, and this kit has a box, and inside the box there is a toilet seat and a test tube. Okay. So there is a toilet seat you put on the toilet, and then there is a test tube. You touch the small piece of a stool, you put it in there, shake it up, and you put in the prepaid envelope and you send it to us. And 2 weeks later, all your results and all of the personalized recommendations come on your app. And your app can specifically tell you exactly what's happening inside your gut. But more importantly, it will tell you every single food. Is it good for you or bad for you? And in the next version of our app, when you touch on each food, it will tell you why we told you it's good for you and why we're telling you it's bad for you. So there's, no more black box or because we believe it's bad for you. We'll tell you scientifically why this is bad for you.
Gotcha. I think that's what some of the feedback when I told them I was going to have you on was like, how do they know specifically based on the recommendations? And I think that's beautiful that you guys are going to be able to do that so people can know the why behind it rather than just, hey, here's what to do, here's what to eat, just believe us, right?
And actually, no, so we know because we were using all of the underlying understanding of what is going on inside the gut, and we were using AI. And we finally said, you know what, let's just open it up and let's show people why.
Yeah.
And, so because we have this whole glycemic production, glycemic prediction model. So for example, we have people who actually get massive glycemic response from almonds, even though most people believe the almonds are low glycemic response, and anytime you want a snack, you pop in the almonds.
Yeah.
It turns out, like my wife works out every single day, and she eats healthy and everything. And I was telling her, you really should do the Viome test. And she said, I eat healthy, and I don't need to worry about it. Look, I look fine.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to argue with her. Right? And finally, I able to convince her. I said, look, what's the harm? You should do the test and you should get the results. And I told her, just try it for 3 weeks. That's all I ask you. In 3 weeks, she comes to me and says, what's amazing? I used to always get tired in the afternoon. And I just thought it's very normal. I need to just get rest for 15 minutes or 30 minutes and I feel fine. But I was always tired. Now that I've avoided the foods, I just don't feel tired anymore. And I said, what did you avoid? He said, exactly what Viome said. Is I shouldn't be eating dairy and almonds. And those were the 2 big things for me. As soon as I cut them down, don't get tired. And she starts telling me, so, all the baby fat that I had is gone. And I said, what baby fat? You never win that battle. You and I both know that.
That is awesome. I think it's amazing. I think this is what's gonna. My hope is the way I see it is to bring peace into the health and fitness industry. Because you maybe from an outside perspective you can observe this, but sometimes people get so dogmatic about the way they eat, thinking, "Hey, this worked for me. This saved my life. I should preach this to everybody else, and it will save their life too." And then it almost becomes a religion to them, and they look down on other people that don't eat the way they do. And so if we could all just accept that it is bio-individual, and if you could find a way to customize it through something like Viome and then customize your diet to you, then you don't need to look down on people and say, hey, look, I know my microbiome, and I know what's good for me. Even though an expert might be like, hey, you shouldn't be eating that white bread, that's going to kill you, it's going to cause inflammation. But now you can actually back it up with scientific data, right?
Yes. And that's very interesting is that, it's really not that I don't trust you when you tell me, Drew, say, I went on this, I avoided dairy and almonds and I felt better.
Yeah.
And you should too. And I'm going to look at the stuff. No. I don't, God bless you. I'm glad it worked for you. It's not going to work for me. Maybe I need to, for me, my foods that were really bad for me was spinach, oats, and avocado.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Right? So think about everything that I would have thought was healthy for me.
Yeah. Which do you find some people get disappointed? They're like, man, I just love it so much though. Like avocado, I know some people love it, right? And if they find out that it's bad for them, it's probably hard for them to let it go. But it's probably something where it's in moderation, right? Or maybe
it's minimized. So we say eat sometimes, but here's the best part of it, Drew. The things that are bad for you today or the things that are good for you, remember, as you change your diet, you're feeding different microbes and you're not feeding other. The balance changes, and it's quite possible when you do the next test in 3 or 4 months, it will say now you can eat all the avocado you want. It's totally fine. Because so it's really, think of your gut as a ecosystem. It's not individual. So it's like a seesaw. It's imbalanced, and you start to feed. And now it's balanced. If you don't stop, it's going to go imbalance the other way, right? So you have to constantly straddle and keep it balanced, right? You tune your car once a year, and you got to tune your body at least a couple of times a year, or it's going to end up in a repair shop called emergency room.
Yes. So how often do you recommend people doing a Viome test? Once a year?
So if people are, have chronic conditions, I really believe you want to get your gut in balance really fast, and you should be doing every 3 months or so.
Gotcha.
As you start to get your chronic conditions in, in more or less in a good place, then you can do twice a year, and then you move on to once a year. But you really have to, in the beginning, make sure that you get the good balance rather than going up and down, up and down, up and down. Because if you don't change, you essentially would have the inflammation the different way.
Gotcha. And go ahead.
So it's not the bacteria. So one of the things that we learned was it's not the bacteria are good or bad. It's the ecosystem that's good or bad. So just last week, there was a very interesting research paper that came out that E. coli, it's actually helpful to your gut in allowing you to absorb iron in your mitochondria. Which is mitochondria needs iron to produce ATP for ATP cycle to produce energy. And it turns out it's the E. coli that actually releases the cytophores that actually allows our body to absorb iron. Now, everyone thinks E. coli is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but same thing with C. diff. C. diff may be bad if it takes over, but every one of us has C. diff, and it's actually kept in balance with other organisms. If you don't have any bacteria that are bad, your immune system is not actually active at that point. Your immune system is basically not primed. So when something happens, your immune system jumps on it. So you got to keep your immune system primed, and that's why you need the whole ecosystem. You can't just have all good stuff.
So you're saying that it's okay to have some bad stuff every once in a while to provide balance.
Because the ecosystem needs to be in check. So, but what happens is when we take antibiotics and we throw the nuclear bomb inside the body, and the bad stuff takes over, and that's where we have a problem.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, it disrupts the balance that's there, right?
Exactly.
Oh man, that is so awesome. What kind of feedback are you getting from the healthcare system? Because that's what you're trying to fix. Doctors, how is it going there in that industry?
So it's very interesting is, as you know, we started the conversation with that. Everybody in the healthcare system wants you to stay sick because that's the only time they make money. You go to them, I'm sick. Oh, ka-ching, right? Doctor makes money, the hospital makes money, your pharmaceutical companies want you to be sick. In fact, there was a CEO of a pharmaceutical company on an investor call says the best drug we develop are the drugs that people have to take for the rest of their life.
Wow.
In other words, the drugs that don't cure anything but keep people sick are the best drug.
Wow.
Now, I wonder if that person stands in front of the mirror and hasn't shot himself yet, because that is crime.
Yeah.
The pharmaceutical companies, Drew, have become parasite on humanity. Now, you and I and the humanity have to come together to kill these parasites. And if we don't kill these parasites, they're going to keep us sick. And that's one reason, Drew, what we did is instead of working with the healthcare system that is going to want to kill us, we decided we're going to go directly to the people who are sick. We're going to empower every person to become the CEO of their own health. I want you to take control of your own health. We want the coaches, the health coaches, the nutrition coaches, and people like you, Drew, who are getting this message across. It's the people like you who are going to change this system. It's not going to be the doctors and the hospitals because they are too married to keeping people sick. So I salute you, for what you do to bring the knowledge to people so they don't feel victimized. And when you are helpless and you are sick, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And guess what happens? Anytime you are helpless, someone is going to victimize you. And that happens to be our healthcare system.
Yeah.
So I love what you do to bring this knowledge to people so they don't feel helpless.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And that's why I'm such a big believer in helping people become their own self-experimentation. And that comes with knowledge and learning how to do that. And Viome, I think, is a great way to give people that power to become the CEO of their own health rather than, okay, I'm sick, go to the doctor, they tell me what to do. I take it, just blindly sometimes. And, that's my hope and that's my message. So I really appreciate that. And that's why I'm grateful to have you on the podcast to further spread this message that's the way we're going to change the healthcare system is by empowering people with that knowledge that they need and tools that they need to become the CEO of their own health. And I think it's hard for people because they just want to be told what to do sometimes. But I think that's how we're eventually going to change and break out of this this situation that we're in. And so I really appreciate that, Naveen. Thank you for the kind words.
No, but so I really mean it because, if you think about it, look, our current healthcare system, when you have a chronic disease, they never want to understand what's causing it. They simply want to suppress the symptom. Yeah. We know it is an inflammation. They don't want to know what's causing inflammation. You have autoimmune disease. What do? Suppress the immune system. I got a headache. Let's not worry about why. Let's just suppress the headache, right?
Yeah.
Every single thing is about suppressing the symptom. And when you have a flame, the inflammation, the flame is burning, and you suppress it here, it's going to pop up in other places. So every time you have a chronic disease, you take one of their drug, it causes 3 more symptoms. They have drug for all 3 of them. Now you have 9 more symptoms. They have drug for all 9 of them. And by the time you get old, you're popping more pills than blueberries. And that's a problem, right? Right? And that is really what our healthcare system does. And here's another thing that most people probably know automatically that, the best drugs, when they talk about efficacy, at the most, they have efficacy rate of 20% to 25%. And what that really means is 75% or 80% of the time, the drug you are taking is going to do absolutely no good to you and only going to harm you. Because remember, efficacy is 25%. That means 75% of the people will have no good other than harm.
Yeah.
And even the 25% of people who benefit will also be harmed. Imagine any industry where you can go sell your product and say, 75% of you only going to be harmed by it. Other ones can be benefited, but also be harmed by it. Can you buy my product, please?
It's crazy to think about it that way. If you change your perspective and see it from a different perspective, it really opens up your eyes and kind of allows you to get out of the Matrix. You've seen the movie The Matrix, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You live in your own world.
Exactly. So last couple of questions, because I want to be respectful of your time. What about like very specific foods? I mean, spinach, almonds, those are kind of like basic foods. But when it comes to, aspartame or sucralose or, these artificial sweeteners, are you guys expanding the database of those foods?
We actually have all of them in our database.
Okay.
But the fact is, any of these artificial sugars, so that you know how they work. When actually you eat something sweet, as soon as it touches your tongue, it releases the enzymes in our body, and it says, oh, the sweetest stuff is coming, start releasing the insulin.
Yes.
Guess what happens? So it goes down, and guess what in the gut? They don't see any of the stuff they're looking to digest. And now you have all this insulin, and eventually you become insulin resistant. So if you're drinking Diet Coke, what's going to happen is going to make you more fat than actually keeping you slim. The Diet Coke is actually makes you fat because your body becomes completely insulin resistant because it essentially is expecting the glucose to come down, and it doesn't see that glucose coming down.
Yeah.
Right. So all of these artificial stuff, other thing you probably saw, the glyphosate, all of these things that are, pesticide that we're putting in our food.
Yep.
What are they supposed to do? They're supposed to kill the organisms. Guess what? When you put in your body, it's killing those organisms that are keeping us healthy. Mm-hmm. Other research that very interesting came out, Drew, that you may really enjoy is about a month ago, there was a paper published that says mother's microbiome during pregnancy has causal impact on autism of the children.
Wow.
Right? That means your microbiome of the mom, because remember, it's producing the neurotransmitters, serotonin, it's producing GABA, it's producing GDNF. All the stuff that is being produced in your gut is what actually allows during child growth to develop the brain. And if you don't have the right microbiome, you're going to essentially have a child that's going to be deficient in some of the growth factors that it needs, right? Interestingly is, during the first week of mother's breast milk, it contains mostly cholesterol that cannot be digested by the human body. It is there only to feed the microbiome. So imagine what nature is telling us. I just created this offspring. The best way I can keep it healthy is not to feed it, but to feed them.
Interesting.
Right? So interestingly, now, if you think about us as basically a portable container for trillions of these organisms, and they essentially created us for their own benefit, right? So we really are a microorganic, superorganisms containing the multitude of these organisms.
I know, it's so amazing to think of that. When you said we're less than 1% human, if you think about it, it's insane. But at the same time, it opens up people's eyes. But anyways, Naveen, thank you so much for coming on. One last question that I had for you: is Viome the only project you're working on, or are you still working on these other projects? That you talked about going to the moon next year. Are you going to be going to the moon, or is that just something you're working on?
So it's interestingly, so this is the only company that I'm currently the CEO of. I'm a chairman of Moon Express,
okay.
And we actually going to be launching our first mission to the moon next year. Yep. And it's going to be first mission is going to be unmanned mission. But
gotcha.
I'm raising my hand that as soon as we go to the moon, I'm going to be one of the first one to go to the moon.
Okay, cool. I was just curious. I had to ask that question. But
absolutely.
Really quick, how can people go find Viome and get their test kit? What's the quickest, easiest way for them to do that?
So the Indians cannot pronounce the word "we." So
yes.
Now you have to spell it for me. How do you spell Viome?
Viome. Viome. Did I spell it right for you?
That's perfect. So you can go to Viome.com and you can find, you can obviously sign up for Viome. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on a social media on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. And if you want to send me an email, my email is my first name dot last name at gmail.com. So feel free to reach out to me. I always answer every email. I read every email. I look forward to hearing from you. So please do reach out to me.
Wow, Naveen, you're awesome. Thank you so much for what you do. Really appreciate it. A lot of respect to you. Thank you for coming on, and we'll put all this in the show notes. So,
and by the way, this is another one. This is my book coming out on October 1.
What? Oh man, that is okay. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Moonshots. Really quick, what is it about?
This is about actually how do we solve global grand challenges using technology, and how you and I and a small group of people are capable of doing things that only the superpowers could do before. So how entrepreneurs become superpower.
Wow. Perfect timing, because this episode will come out right around that time. So I'll be looking forward to that, Naveen. And everyone make sure you can go check out Moonshots. Naveen, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.